I once knew a Marine aviator who flew combat missions over Southeast Asia. He rarely spoke about those days, but when he did, his eyes would drift to somewhere distant. His squadron, VMAAW 225, called themselves the Vikings, a name chosen not for its historical romance, but for the fighting spirit it represented. Before the intruders arrived, they flew A-4 Skyhawks. Capable machines, certainly, but single-seat aircraft that left pilots alone with their thoughts and their targets. When the A-6s touched down at Cherry Point in 1968, everything changed. Suddenly they had a bombardier navigator sitting beside them, a partner, someone to share the burden of threading through hostile skies in pitch darkness. That autumn, orders came through, deployed to Da Nang. The squadron was heading into the cauldron of America's most controversial conflict, armed with an aircraft so sophisticated that naval planners had initially hesitated to risk it in combat. Over Vietnam's jungles and mountains, the Intruder would prove itself in ways its designers could scarcely have imagined. This wasn't just another warplane. This was a machine that fundamentally changed how naval aviation approached the mission of putting ordnance on target, rain or shine, day or night, through weather that grounded everything else in the sky. The aircraft looked unconventional. That blunt nose, those straight wings, the side-by-side cockpit that resembled a commercial airline or more than a fighter jet. But appearances deceived. Beneath that utilitarian exterior beat the technological heart of modern precision warfare. Understanding the Intruder requires stepping back to the mid-1950s, when the Cold War's shadow lengthened across the globe. The Korean conflict had revealed critical deficiencies in close air support capabilities. Marine commanders wanted jets capable of delivering accurate fire support to troops engaged in ground combat, regardless of visibility conditions. Simultaneously, the Navy faced a different but related problem. Their carrier-based attack aircraft could strike targets during daylight in clear weather, but modern warfare demanded round-the-clock capability. Storms didn't halt enemy movements. Darkness didn't stop supply convoys. The fleet needed an aircraft capable of finding and destroying targets in conditions that rendered conventional bombing little better than random. The Marine Corps and Navy requirements, though distinct, aligned sufficiently that a single design could address both needs. The call for proposals went out to America's aviation industry, and several companies submitted concepts. Grumman Aircraft Engineering Corporation, operating from their Long Island facility, had built their reputation on rugged naval aircraft. The Wildcat and Hellcat fighters of World War II had established Grumman's credentials as builders of aircraft that could absorb punishment and bring their pilots home. Their design team, confronting the dual requirements of all-weather precision and close air support capability, produced something genuinely revolutionary. The YA-2F-1 prototype represented a radical departure from conventional naval aviation thinking. The design featured side-by-side seating in a pressurized cockpit, highly unusual for a carrier-based attack aircraft. This configuration facilitated crew coordination during the complex tasks of navigation, target identification, and weapon delivery. Two Pratt & Whitney J52 turbojet engines mounted beneath the wing roots provided reliable thrust while remaining relatively simple to maintain aboard ship. But the true innovation lay hidden within that distinctive bulbous nose. The electronics of the 1950s represented cutting-edge technology that would define the aircraft's capabilities and limitations for decades. On April 19, 1960, the prototype lifted off on its maiden flight. Performance met expectations, and the Navy rapidly moved toward production. The aircraft was redesignated A-6 Intruder, and Grumman began manufacturing what would become one of the most important attack aircraft in American military history. To truly appreciate what made the Intruder special requires understanding Diane, the digital integrated attack and navigation equipment. In an era when most homes lacked even basic calculators, Grumman engineers were cramming sophisticated computers into an aircraft that would operate from pitching carrier decks in combat conditions. The system integrated multiple components into a unified targeting solution. A search radar scanned terrain and potential targets. A tracking radar maintained lock on selected objectives. An air data computer processed airspeed, altitude, and atmospheric conditions. An inertial navigation system tracked the aircraft's position with remarkable accuracy, crucial in an age before satellite navigation.
These systems fed data to a central computer that calculated precise bomb release points. The crew could input target coordinates, and Diane would guide them to the release point, accounting for wind, aircraft speed, altitude, and ballistic characteristics of the selected weapons. In theory, an intruder crew could strike a target they'd never seen, through clouds, in darkness, with accuracy approaching that of daylight visual bombing. In theory. Reality proved considerably more complex. The electronics of the 1950s suffered from reliability issues that would plague the intruder throughout its early service. Mean time between failures for the radar systems averaged around 4 hours. The computer managed perhaps 3 hours before requiring attention. When everything worked properly, the intruder was a devastating precision weapon. When systems failed, which happened frequently, it became an expensive dive bomber carrying conventional iron bombs. Maintenance crews worked frantically to keep the avionics functional. They became intimately familiar with every circuit board, every connection, every component that could fail. The intruder's electronic warfare officers, the bombardier navigators who managed these systems, developed almost supernatural troubleshooting abilities, coaxing performance from temperamental equipment through a combination of technical knowledge and sheer determination. The cockpit reflected this technological sophistication. The bombardier navigator sat slightly lower and slightly behind the pilot, focused on a hooded radar scope that shielded the display from ambient light. Grumman's designers implemented ergonomic features decades ahead of their time. Distinctively shaped controls allowed identification by touch alone, critical when working in darkened cockpits with eyes locked on instrument displays. The pilot's position, elevated and offset, provided better forward visibility while allowing the pilot to monitor the bombardier navigator's work. This arrangement fostered genuine crew coordination. Unlike single-seat attack aircraft where the pilot shouldered all responsibilities, or conventional bombers where crew members occupied separate stations, the intruder's side-by-side configuration created a partnership. Two professionals working in concert, their skills complementing each other.
By 1965, American involvement in Vietnam was escalating rapidly. The Navy's carriers steamed on Yankee Station in the Gulf of Tonkin, launching continuous strikes against North Vietnamese targets. The intruder's capabilities made it invaluable for this campaign, but its sophisticated electronics also represented a security risk. Naval intelligence worried that if an intruder went down over enemy territory, its advanced avionics could fall into Soviet hands. The Cold War's technological competition meant that every piece of American military hardware contained secrets that adversaries desperately wanted to examine. The debate over deploying intruders to Vietnam reflected this tension between operational necessity and security concerns. Operational necessity won. The demands of the air campaign required the intruder's capabilities, and starting in 1965, A-6 squadrons began rotating through Southeast Asia. They entered a nightmare. North Vietnam's air defense network ranked among the world's most sophisticated. Soviet advisors had helped construct an integrated system of radar-directed anti-aircraft artillery, surface-to-air missiles, and interceptor aircraft. American pilots called it going downtown, flying into the teeth of defenses around Hanoi and Haiphong that rivaled anything faced over Germany during World War II. For intruder crews, the challenges extended beyond enemy action. Vietnam's climate attacked the aircraft relentlessly. Temperatures exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit combined with crushing humidity. Electronic components designed for temperate conditions malfunctioned in the tropical heat. Corrosion accelerated. Maintenance became a constant battle against environmental degradation. Navigation presented its own hazards. Early maps of Southeast Asia contained significant errors, with some charts showing features displaced by several miles. Crews learned to cross-reference multiple sources and rely heavily on their inertial navigation systems, but the risk of bombing errors or flying into restricted airspace remained constant. Perhaps most terrifying were the early bomb rack malfunctions.
During the first months of combat operations, several intruders experienced catastrophic failures where ordnance detonated while still attached to the aircraft. The explosion of a 500-pound bomb beneath your wing left no time to reaction, no possibility of survival. In July 1965, Lieutenant Commander Donald Becker's Intruder suffered exactly this failure during a mission over North Vietnam. The bomb detonated, shredding the aircraft's structure. Becker and his bombardier navigator, Lieutenant Don Eaton, had perhaps 2 seconds to recognize the emergency and eject before their aircraft disintegrated. Becker's ejection seat functioned perfectly, but ejecting over enemy territory merely traded one life-threatening situation for another. He descended into a rural area where North Vietnamese militia were already moving to capture him. What followed was a desperate game of hide and seek, a downed American pilot trying to evade capture while enemy soldiers combed the area. He found an animal burrow, possibly dug by a tiger or other large predator, and concealed himself inside as searchers passed within feet of his position. Hours stretched into an eternity as he waited for darkness, then began moving toward potential rescue areas. His survival depended on the meticulous attention of maintenance personnel he'd never met. The parachute rigger who packed his chute, the technicians who maintained his ejection seat. After returning to friendly forces, Becker hunted down those individuals and personally thanked them, buying drinks for the rigger according to pilot tradition. The bomb rack problem forced immediate engineering response. A redesigned ejection system went into production and retrofit across the fleet, but 3 crews had already died before the fix arrived. It was a harsh lesson in the unforgiving nature of combat aviation. The Ho Chi Minh Trail represented one of the war's most critical targets. This wasn't a single road, but an intricate network of paths, tracks, and roads threading through Laos and Cambodia, carrying hundreds of tons of supplies weekly to communist forces in South Vietnam. Interdicting this flow became a strategic priority, and the Intruder proved ideally suited for the mission. Captain Paul Young and First Lieutenant Robert Burrell received their assignment for Mission 123 on the night of July 27, 1969. They would fly nearly 100 miles west of Da Nang into Laotian airspace, locate moving vehicles on the trail, and destroy them. The mission profile exploited the Intruder's unique capabilities. They launched after sunset, when other aircraft were grounded by darkness and deteriorating weather. Climbing to altitude, they navigated using their inertial system and radar, penetrating airspace where North Vietnamese anti-aircraft batteries maintained constant vigilance. Finding individual trucks on forest-covered trails at night required remarkable skill and patience. The bombardier navigator stared into his radar scope, interpreting the electronic returns, distinguishing vehicles from terrain features. Modern synthetic aperture radar didn't exist yet. This was analog technology requiring experienced interpretation. When they located a target, the attack sequence began. The Intruder descended to attack altitude. The pilot focused on maintaining precise airspeed and heading, while the bombardier navigator managed the weapons release. Diane computed the release point, accounting for hundreds of variables. At the calculated moment, the ordnance dropped away, tumbling toward targets invisible in the darkness below. They didn't witness the results. Pulling off target immediately to avoid anti-aircraft fire meant they were already climbing away when their bombs impacted. Post-strike intelligence might confirm vehicle destructions, or might report nothing. The uncertainty was maddening, but it was the nature of night operations. What mattered to crews like Young and Burrell was that they denied the enemy safe passage. Even if they didn't destroy a truck convoy, forcing them off the roads, making them hide, disrupting their schedules, All of this contributed to the larger strategic effort. And they'd survived. Every mission over the trail meant threading through defenses designed to kill them. Every landing back aboard the carrier in darkness or foul weather represented a triumph over circumstances that would have been considered impossible just years earlier.
Veterans consistently describe the Intruder with terms like tough, reliable, and forgiving. These weren't marketing slogans, but earned characteristics that saved lives repeatedly. Grumman's reputation as the Ironworks stemmed from design philosophy emphasizing structural strength and survivability over elegance. The Intruder embodied this approach. Its airframe was overbuilt by fighter standards, capable of absorbing damage that would destroy lighter aircraft. Stories circulated throughout the fleet of intruders returning to carriers with horrifying damage. Canopies shattered by shrapnel, control surfaces shot away, hydraulic systems leaking, electrical systems sparking, fuel tanks holed, and still flying. Crews learned to trust that their aircraft would bring them home even when logic suggested otherwise. One mechanic who worked at Grumman's facility repairing battle-damaged intruders recalled the factory being evacuated when workers discovered a live 37mm round embedded in an aircraft's tail section. The explosive shell had penetrated the structure and lodged there without detonating. Then the aircraft flew back to the carrier, landed, and was shipped stateside for overhaul, all while carrying an armed explosive in its airframe. This structural resilience translated to crew confidence. Pilots pushing through terrible weather, boring through clouds with no visual references except their instruments, trusted that the airframe would hold together. Bombardier navigators working their scopes while anti-aircraft fire burst around them knew their aircraft could absorb punishment and keep flying. The simplicity of Grumman's construction helped too. Unlike some contemporary aircraft that required specialized tools and exotic maintenance procedures, the Intruder used straightforward mechanical systems that carrier-based mechanics could repair with standard equipment. This maintainability proved crucial aboard ships where space and resources were limited. The ordnance capacity impressed everyone who worked with the aircraft. Maximum payload approached 18,000 pounds, distributed across 5 hardpoints beneath the fuselage and wings. A typical load might include 28 500-pound Mark 82 bombs on multiple ejector racks. Alternatively, the Intruder could carry larger weapons like 2,000-pound Mark 84 bombs, cluster munitions, or specialized ordnance including early laser-guided weapons. This payload capacity, combined with the precision of the Diane system, made each Intruder sortie potentially devastating. A single aircraft could deliver the explosive force of an entire World War II bomber formation with far greater accuracy. Surviving combat missions over hostile territory represented only part of an Intruder crew's challenges. The return to the carrier, particularly at night or in adverse weather, tested skills and nerves in ways that ground-based aviators never experienced. The sequence began with feet wet, flying back over water after completing the mission. Relief at escaping enemy defenses gave way to new anxieties. The vast ocean offered no landmarks, and finding a moving carrier in darkness required precise navigation. Radio communications guided them to the general area, but final approach demanded visual acquisition of the ship. The Fresnel lens optical landing system, universally called the ball or meatball, provided critical glide slope information. This system of precisely aligned lights created a visual reference that indicated whether the aircraft was high, low, or on proper approach angle. Pilots fixated on keeping the amber ball aligned with green datum lights, making constant, tiny corrections to maintain the correct glide path. The approach speed had to be maintained within a narrow range. Too slow risked a stall or insufficient power to maintain altitude. Too fast meant potentially overshooting the arresting wires or landing too hard. The margin for error was minimal. As the aircraft crossed the carrier's stern, the ramp,
The pilot maintained approach parameters while preparing for immediate throttle response. The instant the wheels touched the deck, the pilot slammed the throttles to full power. This counterintuitive action provided the thrust necessary for an immediate bolter, a go-around, if the tailhook failed to catch an arresting wire. When the hook caught a wire, ideally the number 3 wire, but any of the 4 would work. The sudden deceleration slammed crew members against their restraints. Going from approach speed to 0 in under 2 seconds generated forces that never became routine, regardless of how many landings a pilot accumulated. Only when the aircraft stopped completely, held by the arresting wire, could the crew begin to relax. Throttles came back to idle, ordnance panel switches confirmed weapons were safed, the landing signal officer gave the grade, a numerical score assessing how well the pilot had flown the approach. Then began the process of taxiing across the crowded deck, folding wings to minimize spotting space, and shutting down the engines. Maintenance crews immediately swarmed the aircraft, beginning post-flight inspections and preparing it for the next launch cycle. For crews fresh from combat, still processing adrenaline, the prohibition on alcohol aboard Navy ships seemed particularly cruel. There would be no drink to steady nerves, no toast to celebrate survival, just a debriefing, a meal, and a few hours of sleep before the next mission cycle began.
The Intruder's service life spanned decades, during which continuous modifications addressed deficiencies and incorporated new capabilities. The basic A-6A model that entered service in 1963 underwent constant refinement. The A-6E variant, introduced in the 1970s, represented a comprehensive upgrade. Modern solid-state electronics replaced the troublesome tube-based systems that had plagued early models. Reliability improved dramatically. The TRAM system, Target Recognition Attack Multisensor, added forward-looking infrared and laser designation capabilities, allowing intruders to employ precision-guided munitions. This evolution kept the Intruder relevant as newer aircraft entered service. While the design's basic configuration remained unchanged, that distinctive silhouette was unmistakable. The internal systems represented successive generations of avionics technology. The EA-6B Prowler, developed from the Intruder airframe, added electronic warfare capabilities. With an extended nose housing additional avionics and 2 extra seats for electronic warfare officers, the Prowler could jam enemy radars, intercept communications, and provide electronic protection for strike packages. This variant served even longer than the attack model, remaining in Navy service until 2015 and with the Marines until 2019. Combat deployments continued through subsequent conflicts. Over Lebanon in 1983, intruders struck targets in response to the barracks bombing that killed 241 American servicemen. During Operation El Dorado Canyon against Libya in 1986, Navy A-6Es penetrated heavily defended airspace to strike targets with precision that minimized collateral damage. Desert Storm in 1991 represented the Intruder's last major combat role. Operating alongside stealthy F-117s and cruise missiles, the aging attack aircraft continued proving its worth. Navy and Marine Corps intruders flew thousands of sorties, striking Iraqi targets throughout Kuwait and Iraq. The TRAM system's imaging capability allowed precise target identification even through smoke and dust. But time catches every aircraft eventually. Decades of carrier operations, violent catapult launches followed by arrested landings that subjected airframes to tremendous stresses, took their toll. Wing fatigue became a critical concern. Structural inspections revealed cracks and metal fatigue that threatened safety. Plans developed to extend the Intruder's service life through wing replacements and further avionics upgrades. Simultaneously, the Navy pursued the A-12 Avenger II, a stealthy flying wing design intended as the Intruder's successor. The A-12 promised to bring stealth technology to carrier-based attack aviation, allowing penetration of sophisticated air defense networks. But the A-12 program encountered severe difficulties. Costs spiraled beyond projections. Technical challenges proved more difficult than anticipated. Weight growth threatened performance. In 1991, Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney canceled the program, wiping out billions in development spending and leaving the Navy without a dedicated successor to the Intruder. Facing post-Cold War budget cuts, the Navy made a decision that remains controversial among veterans: retire the entire A-6 fleet without replacement. Multi-role fighters like the F-18 Hornet would assume attack missions alongside their air-to-air role. Critics argued this represented a false economy. While Hornets offered greater flexibility, they couldn't match the Intruder's range or payload. The specialized all-weather attack mission that the A-6 had perfected for 30 decades would now be handled by aircraft optimized for air combat, carrying smaller weapons loads over shorter distances. The last Navy A-6E Intruders were withdrawn from service on February 28, 1997. An era ended. Only the EA-6B Prowler variant continued flying, carrying the distinctive Grumman silhouette into the 21st century as a final echo of the Ironworks design genius. What remains is the legend. The stories of incredible courage, remarkable survival, and an aircraft that did exactly what it was designed to do under the most demanding conditions imaginable. The Intruder wasn't beautiful in conventional terms. It wasn't fast or agile. It never achieved glory in air-to-air combat, but it delivered ordnance on target, in darkness, through weather, across distances, with precision that revolutionized naval aviation. And it brought its crews home, mission after mission, year after year, through a war that tested everything America could field. That's why veterans speak of the Intruder with respect bordering on affection. That's why mechanics who maintained them and pilots who flew them remember the aircraft decades later with genuine emotion. The A-6 Intruder earned its place in history not through spectacular performance or technological elegance, but through reliability, toughness, and effectiveness when it mattered most.